Ohana. I hope you're all having a great week. For those of you visiting for the first time, hi, my name is Kai, and here on this channel we talk about true crime cases that happen in the 808 state. So if you're interested in true crime and Hawaii, I highly suggest you hit that subscribe button and turn on all your bells so that you don't miss any weekly uploads. Before we jump into today's case, please remember that this video is intended to raise awareness. It's never my intent to spread false information, and I try my best in researching all the facts surrounding a case before I compile everything into one video. Also, viewer discretion is always advised, as there is adult content that is not suitable for young children. Alright guys, today's case is going to take us to the island of Kauai. We are going to be talking about a young mother of two that tragically lost her life at a very young age. So let's just start from the very beginning. Sandra Mendoncza was born on May 15, 1978 in Misawa, Japan, to parents Larry and Toshi Mendoncza. Sandra's dad, Larry, was in the Air Force military for about 20 years. When he decided to retire, he wanted the kids to kind of grow up on an island, island living, laid back kind of lifestyle. And so he settled on the island of Kauai. Sandra, better known as Sandy to family and close friends, has an older brother named Lawrence Mendoncza Jr., who was about a year and 9 months older than Sandy. The two had a typical brother and sister relationship and got to be pretty close growing up. Always looking out for each other. The family settled in Anahola and lived on a 142-acre ranch oceanfront property with the closest neighbor about 2 miles away. So Sandy and Lawrence Jr. definitely had to learn how to play together, how to get along. They would hang out a lot. They would leave the house first thing in the morning on the weekends, go to the beach, swim in the river, and stay out all day and, basically go home before dark. The pair had an amazing childhood, and as they got older, Sandy's brother would say they became pretty protective of one another. Sandy being the more fiery one, while Lawrence Jr. was more laid back. Sandy was extremely popular. She had lots of friends. She was always doing something. At the age of 4, Sandy shined as a little gymnast. By 5 years old, she began dancing hula. And by 7th grade, Sandy had dreams of one day becoming a journalist. Sandy attended St. Catherine's School and received a trophy for having perfect attendance from 1st to 8th grade. That trophy is still on display at St. Catherine's School. When Sandy graduated high school, she went off to the University of Hawaii, and being the go-getter she is, she wasn't satisfied with taking just 15 semester credits. Now, for anyone who has ever been to college and taking semester credits, 12 credits is a full load, and 15 is pushing it. So the fact that she wanted to take more than 15 is just like, wow. She was definitely an achiever, a go-getter, very determined, focused individual. But it was her father that kind of had to, tell her to pump her brakes or else she's gonna burn out. See, Sandy was already the resident advisor at the dorms, and she was already interning at the student paper. Luckily, Sandy, even though she's being superhuman, she humbly agreed. While Sandy was attending college on Oahu, she's a typical Kauai girl. She missed Kauai, she missed her family. So whenever she had free time, she would fly home to Kauai. And it was on one of these weekend home trips where she would meet a man by the name of Galas. Galas was a little bit older than Sandy. He had a great job, and basically Sandy fell in love with him. Sandy was head over heels over Darren. So Sandy moved back to Kauai, and soon after she moved back home, she and Darren got married in the year 1999. 9 months after they got married, Sandy gave birth to their first son, whom they named Austin. And 2 years after that, she gave birth to her second son, who she named Braden. Now, at the age of 24 years old, Sandy really had her hands full. She was a wife and she was a mother of 2 young children. Life was good and things were moving along as they should. In the Galas household, everybody was happy. Everybody was, doing their part. But in April 2005, that was when everything changed for Sandy. See, Sandy was cleaning out her husband's backpack, and what fell out was 2 pieces of paper with numbers on it. And Sandy called those numbers, and unfortunately, she found out that her husband, Darren, was cheating on her with 2 different married women. Of course, Sandy confronted her husband and he denied it. He just kept saying that, he wasn't doing anything wrong, he wasn't being unfaithful, and that these women were just friends. Now, this is my personal opinion and thoughts, and from my experience, I don't know why some men, I'm not going to say all men, when they're confronted and asked if they're cheating, they just deny. I mean, they take it to the grave. The best thing to do, men, if you are confronted by your woman and you are cheating, is to tell the truth, because lying just makes it worse. Okay, sorry. Let's just keep going. By June 2005, Darren moved out. Sandy got a job at the Poipu Beach restaurant, and this really began to change her life. She started to broaden her horizons, spread her wings, loosen up. She began to go out with her friends, go dancing, go to concerts. She cut her hair into this cute little bob. And a lot of her co-workers at the restaurant, started to see the difference in Sandy. When she was with Darren, she was kind of, closed off, kind of just, more reserved to herself, didn't want to take chances. Sandy started to kind of flirt and talk to a chef that worked in the restaurant. This man, Ryan Shinjo, was a transplant from Oahu. And Sandy, became smitten with him, and Ryan the same. Ryan really wined and dined Sandy. They would take trips to Oahu over the weekend. He would buy her expensive things, nice Louis Vuitton luggage. He really cared about Sandy, and he treated her well. Ryan and Sandy's relationship was getting pretty serious. They would spend a lot of time together, and when Sandy didn't have her boys, she would spend the night over at Ryan's house. On January 25th, 2006, Sandy's dad, Larry Sr., is in Dallas, Texas, visiting Lawrence Jr. And he gets a call from Sandy's boss asking him if he had seen Sandy or talked to Sandy because she didn't show up for work. And now this was very unlike Sandy. She really was a very responsible person. So when she didn't show up, her boss and her coworkers were very kind of curious, like this is not like her. She wasn't answering her phone, she wasn't returning phone calls. And so Larry called his daughter, he called Sandy to try to get a hold of her. Nobody answered, she didn't answer. And Sandy's brother tried to call her, there was no answer. And now, didn't think anything of it. Sandy again was a very popular girl, very busy. They just thought maybe she was doing something, maybe she didn't have her phone on her, maybe her phone died. By nightfall, nobody had heard from Sandy. And so Sandy's boyfriend, Ryan, decides to go over to Sandy's house. Unfortunately, Ryan finds Sandy unresponsive, slumped over in her car, in her garage. Ryan calls 911 and police and investigators show up right away. Now, when investigators get there to the scene, they notice that Sandy has bruises all over her face. She has a bust lip as if somebody had punched her in her face. She has ligature marks around her neck. And even though Ryan discovered Sandy's body around 9:00 p.m., investigators would learn that it was probably 8 to 10 hours prior to Ryan finding her that she was already deceased. Of course, this news devastated Sandy's whole family. You know, something like this just does not happen on Kauai, and to such a beautiful young girl with so much life ahead of her. I mean, can you imagine? The family's just in shock, and they're devastated, and they're traumatized, as they should be. Immediately, Ryan is questioned. Investigators want to know how his and Sandy's relationship was, and he goes down to the station. You know, he seems very nervous. He even admits that he's nervous. He takes a polygraph test and does not do well at all. And investigators are kind of suspicious of him because he just does not seem, you know, at all at ease talking to the police. He just seems on edge, and they just kind of felt like he wasn't telling the whole truth. Ryan does have an alibi, and he says that he was at work, and police, of course, check out his story, and they confirm that yes, Ryan was at work. So there was no way that Ryan could have been the one that had killed Sandy. So who else would want to hurt Sandy? Well, they start to look at the estranged husband, Darren Galas. Darren Galas called in sick that morning for work, so he did not have an alibi. Darren also takes a polygraph test and doesn't do well. In fact, I think he might have failed. And it is on this alone that police arrest Darren for suspicion of murder. However, with very little evidence linking Darren to the crime. So Darren is released, and this case pretty much goes quietly. It took about 2 years until 2 years in the year 2008 for any movement to happen on this case. It wasn't until new DNA technology came out and was able to match Darren's DNA to parts of Sandy's clothes that she was wearing the night that she was murdered. However, because Darren and Sandy was still technically married at the time, this evidence definitely would not hold up in court, and prosecutors knew this. Having Darren's DNA on Sandy's clothes alone wasn't enough to bring charges against Darren. So the prosecutor's office waited. 4 years later, in 2012, Kauai Police Chief Daryl Perry placed a new investigator on Sandy's case. And this investigator basically started from the beginning, from scratch, and just dug deep and just dove into the case, and really, as they say, didn't leave any stone or rock unturned. I mean, she really went to town. And it was discovered that Sandy told her divorce attorney she was scared of Darren and that he was constantly harassing her. The key piece of evidence that would indict Darren on Sandy's murder charges was a calendar that Darren actually kept. Every time he would get upset at Sandy, he would write in this calendar. Every time that Sandy was late picking up the boys, he would write in the calendar. So what really sealed the indictment charges for Darren was the fact that on the day of Sandy's murder, on January 25th, 2006, Darren did not write anything on his calendar that day, which is really odd because Darren said that Sandy didn't show up picking up the boys, and his normal track record was that he would write every little thing that Sandy, did or did not do. But he didn't write on January 25th, 2006 that Sandy didn't show up. So to the prosecutor's office, this was just very odd behavior. Although this calendar was enough to indict Darren on murder charges, he would remain free on bail for another 5 years until the prosecutor's office put together their case. See, the prosecutors knew that the defense attorney team would blame Sandy's murder on Ryan because Ryan was the one who discovered Sandy's unresponsive body in her garage. Ryan was the last person to see Sandy alive, and Ryan was, had a track record. Ryan was released from federal prison on those drug charges. He told investigators that he witnessed Darren's violent behavior towards Sandy. In January 2018, Darren took a plea deal. He pled no contest to first-degree assault, inflicting serious bodily harm, and he received the 10-year maximum prison term. Now, obviously, Sandy's family was devastated because they wanted to see, the person responsible for Sandy's murder and death spend the rest of their life, behind bars. But the prosecutor's office knew that if they didn't offer him a plea deal, taking this case to trial was very risky, and, Darren could have possibly been found not guilty. And so the prosecutor's office did not want to take that risk. They did not want to see Darren walk free. They believed that Darren receiving 10 years versus, 0 was a better chance to take. So in May 2018, Darren was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Unfortunately, Sandy's father, Larry, passed away due to a heart attack before this case was ever closed. Sandy's family obviously experienced a tremendous amount of pain. Losing a daughter, losing a loved one, and in such a manner is devastating for sure, and something that nobody can ever plan for. But Sandy's family took that pain and turned it into something positive. They paired up with the YWCA on Kauai and started a Never Forget Sandy G golf tournament every year to raise funds to help, women that experience domestic violence. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Let me know what you guys think about this case, and have you even heard about this case? Next week, we are going to be covering a case that takes us to the island of Maui. So hopefully you guys come and check me out. All right, until then, stay light, stay lovely. Bye. Bye.